and our nebula. And we're going to look again on December 21st, 2012, and we're going to view our star Sirius and the nebula of Orion here. And we're going to note that it's 21 degrees in its height, of the azimuthal height off the horizon. We can also see that it's exactly 90 degrees directly above Sirius, and that is the M42 nebula. And if we look here, we're going to be tracking the Pleiades as well. And if we see, this is the Pleiades up here. It is 11 degrees off of being vertical, or 90. Okay, we'll zoom out. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to look at 1,000-year intervals. Now we're going to track Sirius on the horizon. Now we've moved. Okay, this is the year 0. We went back 2,000 years. Okay, we took a picture in 2012. We're gonna view it on the winter solstice again, but it's going to be when Sirius is on the horizon, and we'll watch how that moves. Okay, we see it moved off there a little bit, right? Now, this is the year 0 that our nebula here is now 33 degrees over, and the star Betelgeuse is right at 90 degrees in Orion, and the Pleiades is now 17 degrees. So we can see how they've moved in that 5,127 years. Now, if we go back to the next calendar point, which would be the Hebrew calendar, which was 5,773 years ago from our galactic alignment, here's what we see. Our galactic plane is exactly 90 degrees to our horizon. So our galactic plane was very low on the horizon in 2012. Now it has moved up into 90-degree position, going backwards, to 3,760 BC, which is 5,773 years prior to the galactic alignment. And at the same time, at 10 hours and 33 minutes into the day, we have Sirius on the horizon, and we have Regulus on the horizon as well with Leo. So this is hugely important, and it gets way deeper into what I can cover here. But this is the beginning of the Hebrew calendar. And the reason that date was stated is because of this geometrical positioning of the galactic plane. It was at 90 degrees. So if anyone ever wonders why is the Hebrew calendar started then, this is why. It's all about geometry. It is on that date. Now we're going to look at Orion and the importance of the 3 belt stars and these pyramids lining up with the 3 belt stars. How they did that was they took the grid of 8 that we had in here, and they moved it up here, and now they have, there's 13 across. There's 9 here plus 4 gives us 13 total. And what they did was they made a grid, and this grid is based in the Fibonacci ratio, and it's a golden rectangle, just like we observed earlier when we were looking at the Sphinx and the spirals. But we're going to create another spiral, and this is the importance of Robert Bauval's Orion correlation theory, that the 3 pyramids align with the belt stars. Well, when you do that and you create this spiral within this plan, now we can look here and see here. There are the 3 belt stars. There was our original 9x9 template. Now this is where it starts getting really beautiful and profound. If this is time-lapse photography of the constellation of Orion, there are our 3 belt stars that we align to. This time-lapse photography allows us to see very dim light that we, actually, if you're in really remote areas, you could see what is known here as Barnard's loop. That is this spiral that emanates from this M42 nebula. Right here is our M42 nebula in Orion. Orion's the Great Orion Nebula. What we're seeing, that red spiral, is ionized hydrogen and plasma, which is part and parcel with like a magnetic field or current. Electricity flows in a spiral. So what we're looking at here is an electrical ionized hydrogen and plasma emanating from our nebula here. Now notice our spiral that we just drew from a geometrical plan here perfectly emulates that path of that Barnard's loop. That's a Fibonacci spiral. There's our center. The stellar nebula is right at that center of that spiral, emanating from M42.
As I understand it, you explained, and maybe you'll explain for people here, our sun and our solar system and our whole galaxy, it doesn't just
right
on a plane. It's moving.
Correct.
And as it moves, it's a spiral trail.
Right.
So
This is where this is all coming to. What that is, that trail right there, just as I say right here, the spiral created from a template reproduces Barnard's loop, suggesting a path or trajectory of stars that are born and then ejected from the nebula, leaving an electrical plasma trail that we can observe using time-lapse photography. It's the trail from which the stars, when they're being birthed, are coming out. It's a path. And that, quite frankly, is the path of our sun. I know probably might be some academics that would want to question me on that. We're going to look at, now we're going to take that spiral, and we're going to take another spiral, and we're going to spin it. We're just going to spin it so that it's 153 degrees. Now, if you could imagine if you were standing in a boat and you wanted to throw a net over the boat, you would throw it out kind of in a spiral motion. And that's kind of the idea. If we look, and we can see this kind of looks like a net here, right, with the squares and everything. Just imagine we're throwing that in a manner that when we throw it, we're going to end up at 153 degrees of angle. There are several spirals involved. There's more than one star birthed out of this nebula. We saw the red is tracking one of our movements. That is our sun path. These other two that I'm showing you here, the one in the white I just showed you, and now the one in the blue, this is another spiral. And there's very precise degrees that they're aligned to here. And these two numbers here are the two different numbers of these angles of the two different spirals. And if we subtract this number, our 3114, which is the year 3114 BC, it's also a degree here in our angles. If we subtract that from this number, which is the angle of the blue spiral, we get 0.5773, just like the height of our Great Pyramid, just like the year 0 in the Hebrew calendar, counting back from the galactic center. And I wish I had about 2 more hours so I could. Now we're going to back out. I'm going to really kind of breeze through some of this because there's some stuff I want to show you that goes beyond this. But for instance, there's all the constellations that surround the Orion. This one, Monoceros, we'll quick hit on this. I just want to show you, this is an example, perfect example of an asterism that has, they used it to point out things. the word monoceros, the name of that constellation, if we break that down, mono means one. One point in geometry would be the point of the compass. Ceros has the meaning of plural or more than one. So if you put that word monoceros together, it means more than one center. And it's represented usually in the depictions of the drawings as a unicorn with a spiral horn. Now, if we look and we draw a line on that first part of the asterism, that first one points right to the center of our spiral. The other one points to our galactic alignment, the sun and the galactic center in our zodiac there. So right there, they're showing monoceros is pointing to two centers. So it's really profound in that all these constellations have a meaning and a purpose, and the asterisms that are in them. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through. I'll show you how these spirals emanate. There's our second one. Now, our blue spiral here relates to the Pleiades, which we can see that spiral comes right by the Pleiades. And the rest of the parts of the asterisms also point at positions of this geometry. So here's three spirals that we're looking at. One is related to the Sun and Earth and Sirius and the Pleiades. And they were all birthed out of this M42 nebula. So our Sun, the star Sirius, and the Pleiades system, what they're telling us here is that they all originated from that same stellar nebula. So we can show you too that all these asterisms are also geometrically pointing at significant places. Here are different cultural references as to the dates and the birthed out of this M42 nebula. So our Sun, the star Sirius, and the Pleiades system, what they're telling us here is that they all originated from that same stellar nebula. So we can show you too that all these asterisms are also geometrically pointing at significant places. Here are different cultural references as to the dates and the alignment here being the Mayan hearthstones. The Mayans talk about the three stars in Orion with the smoke at the middle or at the center. That would be the nebula of Orion. But we have here Mayan, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Hindu, and Sumerian all relating to this dating. Now, here's where it starts to get really interesting and intriguing. What I discovered was that I'm thinking, my God, am I the only one knows it, that's figuring this out? It's not out in the public. No one has showed this information. But as I developed this more and more, I found, oh my God, there's plenty of folks that know about this. And this knowledge has been passed down with priests and adepts and through different secret societies and governments and religious institutions. They know this. You bet they know this. Are they telling you about it? No. Why wouldn't they? I heard somebody say, why wouldn't they tell us? Well, that gets into a whole deeper subject, but maybe we can cover that a little later. That requires a little bit of going into it a little deeper, but there is very good reason to a point, and to a point I disagree with their reasons for keeping it secret, and this is what I'll continue to show you. But the information is encoded in several different ways, in architecture and in symbolism, and they encoded it in heraldry and flags. They encoded it in paintings and artwork by masters, the men in the Renaissance, and when the Knights Templars all of a sudden, after they spent a little time at King Solomon's temple doing a little excavating, they come up with, they become very powerful, and they start building these amazing churches and cathedrals, which I, as a woodworker, have had the pleasure of working on some of these structures, and that was another early point that got me interested in this, working on cathedrals and the Gothic design of churches. This is all part and parcel of this geometry. The Knights Templar were very well aware of all this. The Catholic Church, it's really they did this, and I think I'm just going to go and show you one that you're all going to recognize. So what we've got is a very specific map, and it's very precisely plotted. So nothing here is, you could say, random. It is very precise. It's like a fingerprint. There's no other map quite like this. This is what it is. But what some of these masters did, these brilliant minds back in the Renaissance time, and when they were doing their paintings, they were all aware of this knowledge. But what they would do is they would use this template to compose paintings. All right, so when they started out making a painting, and these were the schools of, like the school of Athens, where you had the Pythagoreans and Plato and Aristotle and all these guys. They all knew this. They're all very well aware of this. But in the artwork, what I'm going to do now, and I can do this point by point, and it'll be abbreviated here because I'm already over.
They did it through the Akashic.
On my time, I'm going to draw or plot out a painting, a portrait actually, and I've done this on many. So this is only one example, but one that I thought you'd recognize. And so I'll just go, and using this geometry, I decided from an artist's point of view, we're going to create and compose a portrait of a person. So here we just kind of gave us a little bit of a drawing surface there. So what we're going to do here is all these, we're going to place her eyes using the division of 11 in our circle, and we're going to use a spiral here. This is 1/11 of the circle. These are 11th divisions of the circle. And you can see there's a lot more geometry going on here than I can really cover. But all these lines are obtained by the geometry of the template. We can see more here, how they're all plotted out. Now, it even gets into the details of the placements of all her fingers. This is all done completely with geometry. There's no comparing to another drawing or picture. Leonardo da Vinci, he knew this. This is what the smile of Mona Lisa is all about. Why does she have this look? Why is this such an important painting? This is why. And there's not very many people who have seen this. I can tell you're in the public domain. You're a select group of few people who have seen this. But if you want to see how precise this is, that all can be done using this. There is the Vatican flag. Here's our 51.27 degrees making the keys to his kingdom. There's the original Knights Templar cross. There's other areas on the plateau on the survey. This is the quarry line that all the blocks that were used to make Giza, build Giza, were cut from this line. And if you're an artist of a lot of really amazing information that was at Giza. So the thing that we need to realize is this message that Giza is telling us, and it's telling us that the motions of our heavens and the great year cycle has seasons within this great year, seasons of the great year. There are climatic changes at certain points in this trajectory of our sun as it moves. When we get to certain alignments, climatic changes can happen and occur, and that's evidenced.
Brain. In the cranium, there is the cerebrum, and in the cerebrum, and in particular the claustrum is sitting right there in the middle of the head, virtually. From the claustrum there is a secretion, brain fluid, and this fluid is an oil, and in ancient times this fluid was called, in Greek it's called Christos. It's called the Christ. It's this beautiful fluid which comes from the cerebrum and pours down the spinal cord. It goes down the spinal cord and it reaches the sacral next door to the sacrum, which are the 5 second bottommost fused vertebrae bones at the bottom of the spinal column. The bottommost portion of the spinal column is called the coccyx. Then just above that is the sacrum. 5 fused bones. So the sacral plexus is connected to the sacrum. And the fluid which comes from the cerebrum pours down the spinal cord and comes to the bottommost part of the spinal cord. Now, the claustrum is otherwise known as the holy claustrum, simply because of this beautiful oil, this Christos, that is produced and secreted. This secretion is a secret, and the sacrum is the sacred part of the secret. As the secretion pours down the spinal cord and reaches the sacrum, this is the marvelous way in which our body has been designed. And the spinal cord is basically just an extension of the brain. It also does thinking. And you see, the holy claustrum is otherwise known as the Santa claustrum. You see, because this fluid that goes down to the sacred plexus is a sacred fluid. And this is where the story of Santa Claus bringing presents down the chimney comes from. It's a story of physiology. And the Bible is a beautiful manual through the heart chakra, through the throat chakra, and eventually the oil would arrive with its higher vibration, because you see at the bottom, the oil has a very low vibratory rate. Whereas with proper practices, meditation, breathing, good eating, and good peaceful behavior, one is able to raise that Christ, that oil, so that it crosses the vagus nerve at the top of the spinal column, the 33 vertebrae of the spinal column. You see, because the Christ is crucified at 33 years of age. When the oil arrives at the very, very top, there awaiting is the optic thalamus, an egg-shaped organ in the middle of the head. When it crosses this pneumogastric nerve, this is called the crucifixion. The oil is not killed and destroyed, but it is magnified 1,000-fold. And the oil then touches the optic thalamus, and for 2.5 days remains in a condition that is called dead, that is considered to be dead, and then reaches the pineal gland after 2.5 days and illuminates the optic thalamus and the pineal gland. The optic thalamus was known as the light of the world by the Egyptians and the Greeks because they knew their physiology.
Scientists can't directly observe black holes with telescopes that detect X-rays, light or other forms of electromagnetic radiation. However, we can infer the presence of black holes and study them by detecting their effect on other matter nearby. For example, if a black hole passes through a cloud of interstellar matter, it will draw matter inward in a process known as accretion. Over the years, researchers have found out a lot about black holes.
Okay, you may be wondering why I incorporated those few videos together. Well, it's to prove a point that everything is same, seemingly different. Meaning that the eye in the triangle manifests itself within our brains via the hypothalamus triangle and pineal gland being the eye, and here as well, with the same angle as the Great Pyramid in Giza. And here it goes. Let me get a little closer. Okay, here's the triangle. And here's the eye. And everything emanates from the eye. The eye of Providence, the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye. That is the symbol of our Akashic, our collective, or our existence, because everything emanates from there. Our star, as that great gentleman on that video pointed out, our sun, the star Betelgeuse, Sirius, all emanate from the same point of origin. Right here, Orion's Nebula. Now, within the nebula is even a greater cycle within a cycle, or world within a world, or wheel within a wheel. But I want to point something out here. Okay, see, I'm on Orion Nebula. I'm going to hit info. Is it coincidence? Its angular size is 66 times 60. There's a distance of 413.91 parsecs, or Planck constants. I think that's how you do it. But moving on, we'll go within there. We got us a trapezium open star cluster, which, by the way, oops, wrong one. Trapezium open star cluster. There is no distance. See, there's no distance. See that? Why not? Because there's stars within there. Watch. Look at that. Trapezium means table in Greek or Latin. And there's a black hole in the middle, because that's what the Fibonacci sequence emanates from. Shaped as a cross, circle in the middle, 010101. Binary code. So the trapezium is to Orion Nebula as the King's Chamber is to the Great Pyramid of Giza. The pyramid is to Egypt as Egypt is to Earth. Earth is to our solar system as our solar system is to the Milky Way, so on and so forth. And if we go to it's just incredible, folks, how it all fits together. And it's all wheel within a wheel within a wheel. Why can't I tap on that one? I don't know. Image of the central region of Orion Nebulae. Black hole with 200 times the mass of Sun might lurk there. Image via NASA JPL. Astronomers call them the trapezium. This Hubble Space Telescope image shows the stars of the trapezium in visible light. Image shows the stars in visible light and in infrared on the right. If it exists, the black hole lies somewhere in between these four bright stars, and it's not four, one's a binary. And remember,